Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Let's Book Talk. I am so excited that this show is finally here and ready for y'all to listen. We have an awesome conversation to kick this show off. It's with Hannah McGuire, the author of The Immortal Life of Pate Percival. We get into pretty much everything, her inspirations, her influences, a lot about the book, why you guys should read it, which I really, really hope you do. And yeah, I don't want to spoil any more of it. If you've watched the few clips that I posted on TikTok, I hope that was enough to hold you over until now. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Hannah McGuire. Enjoy. I guess just to kick it all off, if you could tell me a bit about how you discovered, your passion for storytelling and how the people in your life from an early age influenced that.
So I feel like for me, sharing stories is such a great way to just process emotions, and it's a very expressive art. And it's really accessible for lots of people. Making music or film, for example, that's not very accessible to the average person, but anyone
Mm-hmm.
can jot down a story or tell a story. I was always a storytelling kid, going to sleepaway camp or slumber parties. All the other kids would beg me to tell bedtime stories, and it was just a super fun and fond memory. I had a lot of teachers growing up that really encouraged that. Like they would put us in poetry competitions. I got one of my
Mm.
early poems published in a book, so that was
Oh
super
wow.
encouraging. Um, one year, one of our teachers had us all write and publish a children's book, and she got the school to finance it. So we got our own little published copy of our book. So it was always very reading and writing forward at my school.
Mm.
And I just remember my family's kind of full of storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
My brother is actually a writer also, but he's just never published because he's a little bit more on the shy side than me, if that's even possible to believe. But he's a storyteller, and my mom, she has told me stories from as early as I can remember. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a good creative outlet.
For sure. And like you said, the fact that you already had that sort of drive to be a storyteller at such an early age. I mean, did you always want to get to the point where you were a published author, or it's just something that you like to do, whether or not it would lead to that at some point?
I feel like for me, it's definitely something I'm very inspired to do.
Mm,
Many different things in life will be my muse, and I'm just stricken with the inspiration to write something.
mm,
And when I started writing this book, I actually wasn't sure that it would ever be published. But I just started writing it, and I thought I can write a book. And then it sounds silly that I wouldn't think it would be published because where else would that lead to? But somewhere
mm,
in the process, I decided to start learning more about self-publishing. And I realized that if you can put the work into it, that it is attainable. And so
mm,
for me, being published was definitely about like sharing that story with the world and sharing with other readers. I
mm.
entered right before I wrote this book, I entered a poetry competition that had like a cash prize, and I got to the finals, but I didn't win. And I feel like it was really validating that I could get all the way to
Mm.
that stage of the competition. So that was very encouraging. And when I first shared this story, I shared a 40-page version of it with my best friend, and she liked it. And then when I was done writing the book, I shared it with my sister, and she loved it. And she was such a huge encouragement to say, if you put yourself out there, so many people might love your story.
That is awesome. And I actually have the book now on my Kindle Unlimited. So that's right after I'm done with the behemoth that is Throne of Glass. I'm gonna dive into it because I loved the synopsis. I loved, I'm big on the romance genre, so it was like right up my alley. Um, so can you actually talk a bit about the book, what inspired it, the writing process and all that good stuff?
So this book was actually kind of inspired by like a lot of stories and movies that just there were little nitpicks with where I would watch the movie or read the book
Mhm.
and say, man, I wish this would have happened or that would have happened. Why did they do this? What was their motivation for that decision? And I was just really thinking about it and it was churning in my mind. And so I decided, you know, to create the rules of my own universe because especially with fantasy worlds and paranormal things like that, everyone has
Mhm.
their own take on it. Like, for
Right.
example, like Anne Rice has her whole own universe of vampires. And so I was kind of inspired by that, that I could create my own world and my own rules. And really, the first book is you're introduced at the same time as the female protagonist, and you're thrown into this world just as she is. And I use a lot of like references to modern things, modern music, and modern film to really
Mhm.
root you in the fact that she's just in the same place that you are. And the first book focuses primarily on her meeting one person and getting to know them and a little bit about their backstory and their life and their capabilities. And then as the series goes on, because I've actually written book two and I'm writing book three right now.
Mhm.
But as the series goes on, it just develops into such a rich world with this enormous backstory. And, someone who's mentioned once in the first book, you know, by the end of it, they're like a main character. And it's so fun to just develop that. As far
Mhm.
as the story writing process, I'm I'm just a really like lax writer. Some people sit down at a desk, they set up a whole ambiance, they have a schedule.
Mhm.
I am the complete opposite. I wrote most of book one in my car behind my
Oh,
steering
wow.
wheel while my daughter was napping.
That's so
We would go,
funny.
yeah, we would go. We have a coffee shop about 15 minutes from my house. And so
Mhm.
for her nap, we would drive through the drive through and drive home. And I would just sit there for an hour and write. And that was just the time that I had to devote to it.
Mhm.
I write on my phone. Like it's the most casual thing, but it's taken me to like such a great, wonderful result.
Do you feel like that helps you um not be so beholden to like I have to get this done like right now, if not, I'm gonna feel behind or something like that? Because, I come from the world of journalism, so I was always writing to deadlines. I'm sure you've probably had self-imposed deadlines and whatnot. So like, does that way of writing help you avoid the stresses that probably come with saying, okay, I have until February 25th to get this done. If I don't make that deadline, then I'm going to be very, very behind.
Oh, absolutely. I would say that like as a beginner writer, the most important thing that I've told myself is not to stand in my own way because I
Mm,
can be such a perfectionist and I can pressure myself. And not only do I want to meet my deadlines, but I need that perfect end result. And in this process, it's such a hands-on learning experience. You have to pick beta readers. They have to read your
mhm.
story before it's finished.
Right.
You have to edit it, you have to get it out there. And especially being an indie author, like publishing can be so expensive. I couldn't afford a cover designer. I had to do all of it myself. And so you just make these minor adjustments as you go and not sticking to strict deadlines. It helped me work more from like an emotionally rooted place than like an
Mhm.
analytical place because then I'm giving my first draft to my beta reader and their feedback is what's driving me forward and prodding me to continue. So I feel like it's a
Mhm.
much more genuine inspiration to say, I'm writing this because, my sister Sadie loves it. So I'm going to keep writing instead of saying, I'm writing this because it's Thursday and I have to have 500 words by 3 o'clock.
Right. 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 And that's kind of what I was getting at because, you know, from for myself, I would pitch a story and I'd say, okay, you have until Saturday at, 5 to get this done. And from the starting point to when I turned that story in, I had to outline the story. I had to find my sources. I had to do the research. I had to do everything. And then still by the time, 4 o'clock hit, I wasn't in love with what I wrote, and I just had to say, okay, it's done. If it needs edits, whatever, they'll send it back. Um, but going through that process, giving uh, what you have done to your beta readers, I mean, how does it feel once that story is finished to a point, releasing it into the world, so to speak, and giving it to somebody else?
It is definitely like a bittersweet feeling because you're so excited for people to read this work, but there is
Mhm.
that little voice in the back of your mind that says, all of the bad what ifs. Like, what if they don't
Right.
like it? Like, what if you put this book out there and it isn't well received? So there's a lot of worry that comes with it, but something that's really helped me is that I made just like the flying by the seat of my pants decision to join TikTok and to make a BookTok
Mhm.
account. And immediately I just connected with these great people. Before I even posted a single promo or anything, they were like, I can't wait for your book to be out. So I felt like there
Yeah.
was a very non-judgmental place because it feels like you're getting judged when you take something that's such a like a creative, intimate work and you put it out there. But I was so accepted by the community, and even readers like outside of my ideal genre said, "Oh yeah, I'll read your book. I'll tell you what I think. I'll do a
Mhm.
review." So that has really helped. And I've gotten feedback from a few more of my beta readers, and 2 people have reviewed it on TikTok. And I got a 4-star rating. I was very impressed with myself.
Awesome. That is awesome. I mean, and kind of going back to the fact that it is a trilogy, um, was that always the plan? Or did you write the first book and then think this could be a trilogy and then go at it that way?
So I started thinking through my outline of what I wanted for the first book. And
Mhm.
I actually originally was going to do the first book and 2 spin-off books. And then
Oh, okay.
once I sent it out to my first reader, the type of questions that she asked me and the feedback specifically really inspired me to expand it into a series. So I actually have 4 books planned. And then my mind is just always growing. I'm kind
Hmm.
of like a George Lucas storyteller where it's like you start with this basic story, like there's a girl
Yeah.
with a message, a boy flies a plane, and then all of a sudden you're like, there's 900 planets, there's 10,000
Yeah.
species. And
Right.
so right now I have planned the series of 4 and then 4 standalones. So it'll kind of be one of those where it's like there's a universe and there's different series within it. It really has
Mhm.
evolved from just improving off of what I've already written. And it's so silly because
Yeah.
you think, when you're not the author, you think they have this story, they've outlined it, they write this prompt. But as an actual author, I'm writing and I start to write about this random character that they meet along the way. And I start to realize unexpectedly, oh, this person has a lot going on, like as if I'm, meeting a real life person.
Hmm. And that's always, I think, one of the more rewarding parts of writing. Speaking with different authors is the stuff you discover during the writing process is like, oh, I didn't think I would connect so much with this character that's not in the forefront as much as the main character. They deserve their own story. And as Star
Oh
Wars fans, we love to like pick out characters in the cantina or characters just walking by in one scene and being like, what is that guy about? What is she doing?
yeah.
And then we get all these different, spin-off stories. Um, how has not only Star Wars, but any other um, movies or even TV shows, books? I know you're a huge music fan. How have those things sort of creeped into your writing, not only in uh, this trilogy that's soon to be 4 books, but just overall?